Set Life. I'm Amber Buto, and this is our guest host today,
Jake Friels.
And we are sitting, like we always say, with one of the friends of the studio. And it's super exciting for me to get to introduce him. We met just over a year ago, and man has just, sped up time for the last year. How much you have done in the last year and all the great things you've done over the year, and how I've been able to have a front row seat to watch that and encourage you in it. He is the author of this new book here that I hope everybody rushes out and gets on Amazon. But welcome to the show today, Tyler.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So we've been waiting for this day. We've actually talked about this day for a hot year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we would be sitting here having a conversation, sharing with the world from the studio and all that God has put in you to share in this creative world. But we had no idea what the year was going to bring for you in your journey in this industry. So let's just talk about, let's get to know who Tyler is. How did you get into this industry? Did you always think you were going to be in the industry, or where did that start for you?
So I was definitely that kid that had my parents' camera, and I was making Lego movies in the basement. So that's kind of how I got my start. My brother was probably my first assistant director, is the best way to explain it. I fell in love with just the art of storytelling. I've always loved stories. And I remember, I think Spielberg is probably one of the very first, directors I could ever remember knowing his stuff, even as like a young child. My grandfather introduced me to probably some movies that probably shouldn't have watched that young. But I just fell in love with the fact that I could get pulled into a whole nother world. And I loved it. So I was kind of in that, and I was actually an actor in high school. And
makes sense now.
Yeah. So I did acting. I was in musical theater for several years. And I took a film class in high school and stepped behind the camera, and I have not stopped since then. I went, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. I'm going to figure out how to do it. And so I kind of did a missions trip right after I graduated high school. And I just took a break from everything. And while I was there on this missions trip, really felt like the Lord was like, this is what you're doing. You are called to run at the entertainment world with everything you've got. So I did. I went to film school and have been working in the film world for a while now.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, from your career in the basement with a camera and Legos to then you stepping in the church world, I know that you started your career there as well, where you were on staff helping to produce some really cool content for some well-known names in the faith industry. I've got to see some of those, which the one that's my favorite, it was the one you did for John Bevere, correct?
Yeah.
Man, that was a powerful thing y'all produced for him. That was a really, really, we'll try to drop part of that overlay so you can see it and find it, but it was fantastic. So talk about, you got to finish school, went through church programs, and then during that, what did you learn there? How did you apply what you learned? And then when did you venture out on kind of some of your own things?
So ironically enough, it was a little bit backwards. I was doing more secular stuff before I got into the Christian church stuff. So right out of college, I got a job with like a marketing film company, and I was a creative there. I did writing. I did a lot of PA work, did a lot of editing. I worked on the grip truck, a lot of camera operating, and I fell in love with all of that stuff. And I did a full year there, and my boss, who's still a amazing man that I look up to today, just said, hey, listen, I feel like I'm holding you back from really launching. Like, you're not called to stay here and just be limited to this. Like, I want to see you produce. You're a natural born leader. You're really good at writing, and I've seen you direct. Like, you're going to need to go out on your own and do this. And I was like, I've only been married for a year and graduated for a year. I like this comfortable life. Like, please keep giving me a hourly job. I don't think it was salary, but just a job with, being comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it was out of that prayed about it, and I was like, okay, this makes sense. And it was that film you're talking about was the very first project I'd ever done as a freelancer.
Wow.
So they called me and said, we've already got a script kind of done, but we heard you like directing and writing. Is that something you want to help us with? And I said, yeah. So I got in the studio with these guys, and it was a big collaborative effort. It was not just me. I was one of the directors and one of the producers, and we worked with John and put together that story, and it got legs and picked up and walked off. I remember I was in Brazil that summer on a project, and this missionary's like, hey, like, you know who John Bevere is? And I said, yeah. And he said, there's this movie that was translated into Portuguese, this like short film. And it's like going through all these churches and bringing like new, like awakening to their calling in life. And I said, really, what's it called? And he was like, it's called What Are You Called to Do? It's like this black and white film. And I was like, I was one of the directors and producers on that. They're, what? We have the same filmmaker that did that? I'm like, no, it is so much fun.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and it took off. I got pulled onto my first feature right after that. And I worked my way up from a PA all the way up to a producer in a period of 4 months on that process.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I definitely don't know what I'm doing, and I'll figure it out. And so I stumbled through that. And there was a lot of things that told me to walk away. That first movie I was on was rough. It was an independent film, very low budget, and there was a lot of things there telling me I shouldn't be there. A lot of people and a lot of insecurities, a lot of rejection and comparison. And when I left that project, I remembered trying to walk away from the film world because I was like, I don't have what it takes. This is like my second or third freelance project. I don't have what it takes. And my wife is like, you got to keep going. You're good at this stuff. And I was like, no. And I remember I'd never experienced anxiety until that project, where I literally would be shaking on set, praying, going, Lord, you got to help me, because I don't know. I hate being felt like I don't belong. And we're sitting in church after that whole project ended, and there's a whole nother story behind that. But I remembered I was just frustrated. We're sitting in church, and I'm struggling, ironically enough, with what are you called to do? And I'm sitting there, and our pastor's this very awesome dude from New Jersey. And which, if you know someone from Jersey, they're very loud and they're very in your face. He's an Italian from New Jersey. Love the dude to death. And we're sitting in the front row, and he starts yelling, if God has called you to something, why are you throwing in the towel? If God has called you to something, why are you trying to give up? And here I had been trying to apply to hourly jobs that had nothing to do with filmmaking, trying to figure out if I could get a job as a graphic designer. And my wife's sitting there like, just nudging me like, are you listening to this pastor? And so it was that moment that I remember I went home, and a job popped up on my email, and someone said, hey, would you apply to this? We need like an associate producer for this commercial series as well as something else. And I was like shaking, and I applied, and I got a call within an hour. Hey, like, I love what you're doing. I see that you're newer at this, but I need a person who knows the area, who can figure out permits, figure out this stuff. And I took that job, and that job just set me on a trajectory like unlike anything else. I booked Nat Geo right after that.
Yeah.
Like, I got a call from those guys and said, you're the only local we're hiring on this project. We've got one other sound guy, but we're bringing a crew in from California, 20 people. Are you willing to be one of our field producers for 6 months? And I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really great.
I think it's interesting, between every great breakthrough moment in the industry or wherever it is in your life, there's always the greatest opportunity for opposition to quit. And I think no matter what it is, right before you're doing something that you feel like you're called to do, or you feel like you're going to have the most impact in, there's always that moment of just like the wall. And it's that, I like to call it the wall of fear, and it's like
100%.
It's like, fear is just standing between you and your destiny, and it's like, one of the antonyms, or what, I can't remember how you say it, the acronyms, it was fear is false evidence of appearing real.
Oof, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's like that moment right there of going, this is not real.
Yeah.
And I've got to press through. And, I think there's moments like that where, what gave you the ability to press through in that moment? Like, what was the transition that made you go, this is what I'm made to do? How did you defeat that?
Well, like I said, it was the Lord primarily. I know that's like a generic Sunday school answer, like, Jesus help me.
Yeah.
But no, that was 100%. I wanted to give up, and I'm so grateful that I have amazing, beautiful wife, Becca, who just stood by me, and she was very pregnant with our first when all that stuff was going down, and she's like, "Do not give up.
Wow,
like you are called to this." And I was like, "I'm gonna go get a job at the Apple store and start selling iPhones. Like I can do that. That's easy for me." And she's like, "You're not called to easy. You're not called to that. Like you can do more." And I remember she was a firecracker with me and still is with stuff. And she would not let me give up, and neither would the Lord. And so it was this conviction of like, why would I settle? Like, why would not that people working in those jobs are settling, but I knew, man, I had these script ideas and I had these movies, and I knew that I could thrive. Yeah. And I had seen it when I'd worked on other projects, and even when I was in school and I did some of these movies, I'm like, okay, like this feels right.
Yeah.
And for me too, like working in that season, you asked like about some of the church stuff. That season led from going from a secular industry into the Christian industry. Yeah. It was in that moment where all of a sudden I came right off of the National Geographic show, 6 months of work, and everything stopped. And I'm like, okay, 2 months of nothing. And yes, those of us experienced that dry spell in the film world. And I was like, someone's trying to get my attention. And I have a friend that said, "Hey, would you be willing to apply to this church?" And I went, "No, I don't want to work at a church."
Yeah.
And they're like, "You should see the stuff this church is doing." And I was like, it's a church. Like, I'm a Christian. I grew up in that community. We were talking about that. I grew up in this community. It was a community an hour and a half away from where we were living. And it was like, I left that county and I did not want to move back. That was like those people, like I grew up there. I'm from there, but I'm not of that. That is not me.
Yeah.
And so I remember like very clearly felt like I needed to apply after no work. And I get this call almost immediately from this guy, Ryan, who's now one of my best friends. And what's funny, you guys have met him.
Yeah, great guy.
And what's funny is knowing Ryan is very difficult person to get a hold of. And the fact that I got a call like instantaneously from sending an email was a total God thing.
Yeah.
And he said, "We've been praying for someone with producer skills who's coming from the industry that can say, I see where you're at in the church, and I'm willing to challenge you and push you harder. I'm willing to bring a grip truck on your set. I'm willing to hire some of these guys so that way we can compete with an industry standard of excellence." And so that's what I ended up doing. I got pulled into that church for 3 years and loved it. I didn't think I would, but I did. I continued to freelance and work on other movies, but we worked there all the way up until the pandemic, and it was quite the journey.
Yeah, that's great. I think you posed a good question, Jake. And how do you handle the opposition that comes your way when you feel like you're supposed to do something, when you feel like you're called, so to speak, into something? It comes with a great pushback, I feel like. Yeah. And, for me, there's been and I hear in your story too, sometimes there's just even though you don't feel it, even though you can't see it, just out of obedience, or what you would like to call it. I call it in my life as obedience, but it's just kind of the last thing I heard is this. And so I'm going to keep doing that regardless.
Absolutely.
And press through. And I think where some of us get lost in that translation is we want to base it off of how we feel. Yep. And we're like, I don't really love it. Yeah. And it's just not everything I wanted. And I'm not where I want to be. Yeah. And you quit. And that takes you over. And if you had then, and the reason I bring this up, because I know your story, and you've been faced with this a couple of times. Yeah. And when we met, you were in almost one of those. Yeah. Like, I don't want to do this. I think that I'm not supposed to do this anymore. And I'm like, but I think God has something else for you. And so, having those in your life that can speak an encouragement to you, like your wife and other people in the faith, and the people that you surround yourself with is so important, because we all get to that place where we want to just throw in the towel. And I think it's really specifically in this industry when it's creative. Yeah. Because creative comes from a different place than 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It comes from, those are facts driven, Absolutely. They come from vision and passions and drives and all of that. So you feel like when you don't have that anymore, maybe I'm in the wrong spot. Maybe it's dried up, when that's not the case. It's just maybe a shift.
Well, we face, like, one of the biggest things that I think as creatives we face is rejection regularly. And so learning how to handle rejection on the regular is something that we have to do. Yeah. And that's part of what this book came out of, was as Christians, how do we pursue excellence in the industry? How do we do this? And one of the biggest things that I teach when I travel is your identity is not in your art.
That's good.
Yeah.
And when you learn that, the rejection is going to be different because you're not taking it personally. If your identity is in the Lord or something else, regardless of where you're at, as long as your identity is not in your art, because your art does not have an identity.
Yeah.
Your art does not identify as a Christian, Christian artist. It doesn't identify as Christian. It's art. My daughter, when she colors a mermaid, I don't go, hey, is that a Christian mermaid? No.
Yeah.
And so when that stuff happens, when we're not placing our identity, we're not placing our eggs in those baskets, it's just, okay, it's fine. I mean, and like one of the greatest references I use all the time in the book and when I'm teaching is Thomas Edison was asked about his light bulb. And they say, well, you failed quite a few times. And he goes, I found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, talk about an optimism.
Right.
I would have stopped at like 50, maybe less.
Yep.
Yeah.
10,000 ways.
Yeah.
Like talk about someone whose identity is, no, I'm an engineer. I'm creating this, right?
Yeah.
And because his identity was not in the light bulb, it was in his calling.
Yeah.
He was able to pursue.
And I think the cool thing about that too is his mother was a beautiful picture of support, that what you surround yourself. His mother told him that he was so brilliant because he was kicked out of school and burned the family barn down trying to build this light bulb.
Yep.
That his mom said, you're so brilliant that they don't understand your brilliance. So you need to come here at home and learn and keep fostering, keep growing,
Yep.
keep doing what it is that you're doing,
Yep.
and believed in him in his indifference, right?
Yep.
And in what seemed to be a shortcoming to the world actually became one of the greatest inventions of our time.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think having those people around you that encourage you to keep going, keep believing in your craft is really important. We talk about fostering community, in the different communities that you've been in and around.
Yep.
Same for you and all the stuff you've created, having somebody pour into you and saying,
Yep.
I believe in what you have to say. I believe in the content that you're putting out in this world.
Yeah. And too, you're running against generational understanding. So just because I create something new and you're pioneering something or I'm pioneering something, the next generation behind us doesn't no clue what it is. And they'll judge it, right? Going, well, that's not how we did it. You and I were having that conversation the other day, and it was just like, but that's not how it's been done.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
We're in a whole new generation of people. We're in a whole new generation that is intersecting with media in a way that we've never in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
And now us as pioneers are going, we have to press the envelope. We have to get out of the box. We have to try new things, and so the rejection can come in that in and of itself of you'll never be successful. You'll never amount to nothing because you don't do it the way we've done it, you know? And so there's even that rejection that you can face in the industry too, because, and being a pioneer in general, you're always going to be different, know, but till you see the fruit of what you pioneered, then you just go, like, man, it all made sense.
Even if it's just the one, like the whole name of the studio, it's like if one person gains something from your story, from your perseverance, from your story, your perseverance of what you're doing and what you're creating, your impact, right? It's like here at the studio, we believe in the ripple effect, like if you impact somebody for good, just one, okay, maybe by chance, one person impacts another person that then goes and creates a book, that goes and creates things, that goes and the ripple effect that happens from that one touch. So I think this next generation wants the millions of followers, the millions of everything, when it's, what about just the one? Like if you dial it back, you don't feel the pressure neither to like, I got to try to like do this for the world. Like if one person benefits from whatever whatever good I'm trying to do in this world, then hey, if we all did that, the world would be a better place,
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's talk book.
I have a question I want to ask about the book. Okay, so you start off the book talking about how to hear from the Holy Spirit in the industry or in anything, but just explain that to us. I mean, that's just so intriguing to hear. You just, that you tackle the largest thought process of hearing the voice of God or the Holy Spirit, help us see that.
Okay. So I got to back up just a little bit, and talk about how we got to that point in order to explain this.
Good.
Because when I told you we left the church with the pandemic, the world shut down, right? And we spent a lot of time praying, like, what are we supposed to be doing? And I believe the Lord speaks to us. I believe the Lord is actively speaking to us as a body.
Yeah.
And individually. And we spent a lot of time praying. I applied to over 100 jobs and got 100 denials over a few month period. The rejection was strong.
Yeah.
And very clearly you're going, okay, there's something I'm being pushed towards. And we had a friend reach out and say, have you considered doing a missions trip with your family? And I was like, no. I did it as a kid.
That's a big no.
That's a big no. You've got kids. That I have 2 children and 1 on the way. This was 2 years ago. We do not need to start we're good.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm doing really well with my career now. I'm a producer. And my wife was like, you don't have a career right now, hon. There's the pandemic is
I just
going
love
on.
Becca. I'm just going to say, she's like,
wives
go get
are
them,
the-
honey.
wives are
And
the
you
best.
don't have a career as well.
Yeah, and she's so nice about it.
Yes, she is.
I'm more brash about it, but she's so
Yes.
gentle and loving about it.
Yeah.
And she's just like, well, why not? You've always talked about how fond you had of that memory when you were in high school of doing that mission trip. I want to go do that same mission trip with YWAM as well. Let's go do it together. And I was like, well, you know what? There's a good sabbatical. Let's go do it. So we came actually down to Texas because there was no pandemic in Texas, we found out.
We were just riding our horses
Exactly.
up to the grocery store.
So we're out in East Texas,
That's what
like the
everybody
boonies.
thinks. Yes.
And at the end of 2020, early 2021, and everything's business as usual. And so we did this mission school, and it was out of that we realized there is such a need for the body to be trained in industry excellence.
Yeah.
Here I was getting brought into their creative team at this missions group, and they're like, tell us everything you know about this, about creating.
Yeah.
Tell us about how to tell a good story, about how to use lights, how to set up C-stands, lingo. And I was like, there's a need here, and there aren't very many people. And I've met some other people that are doing it. There's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what stemmed this journey. And so we founded a missions organization called Parable International. Ironically enough, we weren't planning on going into missions. And I thought my film career was over with that. Okay, Lord, you said go to missions, so that's what we're doing. We're going into missions. So we started Parable International. We sold everything we owned. We bought a truck and an RV, sold our comfortable 4-bedroom house with my garden, might I add. Loved my garden. Sold that and hit the road full time. And we have been traveling full time with my wife and 3 children and teaching people, how do you be a creative that hears the Lord's voice on secular and Christian sets?
Yeah.
How do you pursue excellence in entertainment? How do you work on projects and know how to be the best of the best? Because as creatives, this is my opinion, and I know you guys agree with this one. As Christian creatives, excellence is a mandate. It is not optional.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I get so frustrated. I know we've watched movies together where we get so frustrated going, you could have done better.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a budget thing. It was just a stylistic choice.
Sure.
Or you could have spent an extra 10 minutes. If in Genesis, the Lord stopped at just good enough with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, no, this is more than good.
Yeah.
When he created us. And yet a lot of people are like, yeah, this is good enough. And I hear that in churches. And that's where Parable came out of, was we stand against good enough. That's it. I'm done.
good.
Yeah.
And so Parable International, we started creating this training program, and hearing the voice of God was the first part of it, because I truly believe if you're going to pursue excellence, you need to learn how to partner with the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to listen to his voice, because he's constantly speaking. He's willing to give you advice. And I'm looking at guys that are changing the world in the secular world that aren't Christians.
Yeah.
And I'm going, how much cooler could our stories be if we ask the creator of creativity, the storyteller of storytellers, a question? And then people are like, wait a second. You could do that? I'm like, you're comfortable with inviting the Lord into your finances, ask him to help you with that math test, ask him to help you with your relationship. Yeah, when was the last time you asked the Lord to help you with a movie? Well, maybe you asked him for some money. Okay, cool. Did you ask him to help you with writing the project? No. What about placing the lights? No, he doesn't care about that, really. Do I care about what color my daughter colors the mermaid? Yeah, I just want to be involved.
Yeah.
Like if I feel like that about my daughter or my son's creativity, how much greater is the Lord like so excited about our creativity?
Yeah.
So we have this process, and I start the book off with, it's essentially, the Lord speaking, because the rest of this book, you're going to really struggle with knowing that like he's going to be speaking, and there's response sections at the end of each chapter of saying, what's he telling you with this? So the first thing I tell people is there's a video on YouTube that I love watching, and it's about a shepherd who has a whole flock of sheep all out in the pasture. And he's got these tourists he's showing. And he said, hey, take a look at the sheep. I want any one of you, see if you can call my sheep. And so you hear one person, here, sheep. And the sheep don't lift their head. Another guy comes over, sheep, sheep, sheep. They're calling them all, and the sheep aren't lifting their head. And he's like, all right, you want to see something crazy? He walks up and says one word. Hey! Every head, hundreds of sheep, every head goes up, and they bum rush the fence.
Wow.
And he goes, all it took was them knowing the one voice they needed to know.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
And that's what the Lord was showing me with this, with that first chapter is like it. Yes, there are lots of voices you're hearing trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You've got relationships, you've got pastors, you've got everyone saying, here's what you should do. But there's the one voice that's got to rise above. So it starts with consistency. And when I walk through some exercises in the book of how do you find that consistency in your quiet time to start hearing his voice more clearly. And it's effective. I'm not saying it's like an equation. Like the Lord does not operate in an equation.
Yeah.
The Lord cannot be bound by any box.
Yeah.
But there's some exercises in there that I think help people hear his voice more regular.
Yeah.
So in saying all that and in walking people through that process, what's a story that you can tell us that illustrates somebody or you heard God's voice, you put it into practice and it came into fruition? Like what's a story that we can even
Relate to.
Yeah.
Okay. So several years ago, I was in Hawaii, and I was working with a group of these kids from the Marshall Islands, which some people are familiar with the whole story, but there's the Marshall Islands, which is where the U.S. government does nuclear testing on. So they picked up all these people and they dropped them in Hawaii and kind of gave them like low income housing. And they're in some pretty rough areas and they're neglected. And it's just kind of a rough area. So I was a part of an outreach team that was just working with these Marshallese kids. And we're sitting there, and one of the kids is asking me about my faith. And he's this like 13-year-old kid. And he's like, hey, brother, you Christian? I said, yeah. And he goes, you hear the voice of God? I said, yeah, he talks to me. He can talk to you too. And he's, nah, he can't speak to me. And I was like, yeah, he will. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. I said, all right, here's a challenge. I learned this challenge from this amazing woman of God that had talked to me named Auntie Donna. I said, she gave me this exercise. You try this exercise, and when I see you next week, you tell me what you heard. So I said, for the next 7 days, when you go to bed, I want you to say, good morning, God, I love you, when you wake up in the morning. Good morning, God, I love you. Good morning, Jesus, I love you. Before you pick up your phone, before you do anything else, put a sticky note on the top of your ceiling or on your nightstand. Say, good morning, Jesus, I love you. I said, she used to tell us, our flesh is still asleep, and so is the devil. There's nothing else on your mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're going to hear a response. You're going to feel something in your spirit. It may sound like you, but you're going to create a repetition over those 7 days. And you're going to start here going, I think that's my dad. That's my dad. And so sure enough, a week later, I approached the kid and I said, hey, how'd it go? And he's like, dude, it's crazy. He spoke to me. And I said, yeah, what'd you hear? He's like, well, I was laying there in bed. I said, good morning, Jesus, I love you. And I heard, I love you too, in my heart. And I was like, that wasn't me. Who said that? And I was like, that was God. And the next day he's like, I heard, I love you too, my son. And he's like, I haven't been called that before. I don't know where that came from. I said, that's God. And he's like, why would he talk to me? He's like, because he cares that much about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, and these are the kids that are just pushed off the corner of society in Hawaii. And like people think, oh yeah, Hawaii, glorious living. Like these guys are put in a pretty rough area and coming from pretty rough situations. And here's this kid who now says, the God of the universe just said, I love you to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think back to, we started filming a project that I did 7 years ago, and we started into the project, and all of a sudden it got to where I'm looking at my videographer at the time and I'm like, oh man, like this is about to be a real deal. We're fixing to spend a lot of money and actually go on a wild ride. We need to know if this is the Lord telling us to do this or if this is just us doing a passion project, you know? Like,
Yeah.
And he went away, prayed for 2 weeks. I prayed for 2 weeks, and we come back together. And I go, okay, this is going to sound crazy. We're in Texas. And I said, we're supposed to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming and film in the Snake River. And he goes, did I write you the note? Did I send you the text? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh my gosh, this is weird now. He's like, the Lord told me we're supposed to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming and film the Snake River. And we hadn't talked to each other in 2 weeks, nothing at all. And we literally picked up everything, loaded all our gear and took off.
Yep.
And it was just like, God cares about this industry. God cares about media. He cares about telling a story, you know, and we need more of us being able to just tap in and go, Lord, what story do you want to tell? You know, how do you want to use this? You know?
Well, and that's something like, so when we started this ministry, I thought, okay, well, we're going just towards missions. And I got called for 4 feature films last year to be a production coordinator, producer, UPM, like all types of like producing type roles. And I was on a Western movie a year ago, and I'm practicing, like the Lord's starting to ask me to practice what I'm preaching. I've been preaching this for a year. I hadn't worked in the film world for about a year. And all of a sudden I get asked to be on this movie with some very big actors from Marvel and from Disney Channel and like well-known folks. And like, I know like we've talked about this story, but I'm on this Western film and my costume designer walks up to me and she's like, you run Parable International? And I said, yeah. She goes, I Facebook stalked you. I said, awesome, cool. And she's like, I watched the message you preached at a church. And I was like, that was like an hour long. Okay. And she's like, and here I am, like one of the producers on this movie. And she's like, I can hear the voice of God now. And I was like, okay. And then this other actor from Vampire Diaries goes, you can hear the voice of God, bro? And I was like, yeah. And he's, you teach me too? Can you pray with me?
Yeah.
I've been trying to get on God's good terms. And I was like, yeah, let's talk. And so over the period of this non-Christian movie, the Lord starts opening up doors. Here I am just working in my trailer.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we had one of our other producers who was playing one of the bad guys. He rolled his ankle on set, got a really bad ankle sprain. It turned black. He's on crutches. He can't walk. He's supposed to have a big fight scene the next day. And we're like, all right, Lord, we don't know what you're going to do with this. Like, and he's sitting there, and me and another person just felt this boldness and said, hey, would you mind if we prayed for you? And he like looks around and goes, well, yeah, I'm a Christian. He's in front of like, there's a lot of crews sitting around here. Like, we don't know where they're at. And he's like, yeah, sure. So we lay hands on him and start praying. And I can feel my hands start getting hot, which I'm like, okay, something fun is about to happen. And he stands up and says, what the crap is going on here? And he starts moving his ankle and he drops the crutches, puts full weight on it. I went, what did you just do to me?
Yeah.
I said, we prayed. And he goes, okay, well, my theology allows for this. It's just never practiced this or believed in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the Lord started showing me, like, I want to be on secular sets and Christian sets.
Yes.
Come on.
Not that we have to be actively evangelizing on set. That's not my calling.
Yeah.
There are guys that we know that they're called to go on secular sets and be an evangelist. Great. I'm called to pursue excellence as a producer. And if the Holy Spirit says, hey, go pray for him. Like,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah,
you got to have that
same.
boldness.
Yep.
So that's what we started doing. And like, that was the first of 4 last year. And it's just like, there were more God stories, and some of them were Christian movies and some of them weren't. And it was like, God was like, I want to be involved in them.
Yeah. He just wants to be ushered into the industry in all facets of it is what I've learned, you know. And I think from praying for healing to, you know, working with a cinematographer that you're like just linked with and going to, you know, the feature that I was on over the summer, we had a lot of, it was a faith-ish kind of film. But a lot of the crew was not faith in at all. And one of the days we were sitting outside, we had been shooting so long. And to be honest, I'm fried. I'm like, okay, this is the last day before we take break for 2 days. And I'm just like, when can we get the day over? You know, I mean, we're just all ready to go. And we're sitting outside, and there's a young girl that I had been going to take breakfast to take to breakfast every morning and models for a lot of the big brands in New York and all of that. And had just spent some time visiting with her, just sharing my life with her and encouraging her to go about the industry in the right, healthy way.
Yeah.
Just loving on her and encouraging her. And we're sitting outside and we're all talking, and I looked up in the sky and I was like, oh my gosh, did y'all see that over there? And, in set, you've got, all of the lights and everything's put everywhere. And just above one of the lights, I could see like an H. And I was like, y'all, why would God put an H in the sky? Like right now, we're all sitting out here exhausted, tired. It's beautiful. And so I'm like, everybody give me H words, give me H words. And everybody's throwing out H words. And so I get up and I look underneath, and it was H-I in the sky. No joke. I took a picture of it and it said hi. And I go, y'all. And may I add, that week we had a major outbreak of COVID on set.
Yeah.
And so we were losing crew members like crazy and all of that. So I was like, y'all, God is saying hi to us right now. He is saying hi. He sees us. We are going to be fine. I think I was saying it more for myself to be you're going to make it. You're going to be fine, but I'm saying it to everybody because it's just who I am and the lens in which I see through.
Yeah.
And when I do that, the little girl that had been taken to breakfast is standing there with us. And she starts to tear up. And she goes, Amber. And I'm like, yeah, Ro, are you okay?
Yeah.
And she's like, I prayed for the first time this morning. And God, I said, God, if you're real and you will help me help Clyde, which was one of our actors that had gotten sick. He was an elderly man that had gotten COVID. And she was so worried about him. She prayed for him and wanted God to protect him and heal him. And she goes, and if you're real, God, I don't even know if you want to hear from me or you can hear from me. But if you do, could you help Clyde? And she bursts into tears and she goes, and he said hi to me. He heard me. It's like, that is just being you and ushering in the presence of God, no matter where you go, no matter what industry you're in, but we all sit in this industry. And, people will say, is this a Christian studio? And I say, it's a studio. I don't know if it can be Christian, but I can.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
I love Jesus. He's my best friend. He's my main man. And I only share in the opportune times that, in loving people. I don't change my answer for other people. And I think that's really what he's wanted to do in the industry. Yeah. And that's what I love about your book. It teaches, those of us that are sitting here, we've practiced this trade. We've developed this, in the way that we are and who we are. But what I love about this book is you help other people to find that.
Yeah.
And that is something that each of us in our own ways have cultivated, developed, learned, had mentors in, people that we've talked to, people that have showed us. But ultimately it comes down to knowing just a few ways of how I found to hear the voice of God, how you have found to hear the voice of God, how you've heard the voice of God. And that's what I love. If people can read this and see where the voice of God can help them flourish in their creativity, not stifle it, but flourish in their creativity, and that you don't have to tap into some other outside kind of source, which is really strong in our industry, but that actually that creativity was ornately put in you to be fostered by the voice of the creator that had put it in you. And I love that about this. And that was one of the things that we talked about when you were telling me this was in you, this book was in you. And I was like, you have got to get this on paper. The world needs this. The next generation, this generation needs to hear what is in here for the 1, 2, 3s, the ABCs on, hey, this worked for me. This is how I kind of did it. Maybe it encourages you.
Well, I think the point you bring up too, it's not called Start Dreaming. It's called Awaken O Dreamer because it exists within you. You were born for this. And something I teach a lot of people when we're traveling and stuff is no one has to teach a child how to dream or have imaginations.
Yep.
No, it's inherent. You're born with that. It is an investment from the Lord from day one.
Yep.
And then at some point in your life, you're told your creativity, your dreams, like that your imagination does not belong.
Yeah.
You're
Correct.
told like, hey, put it away. It doesn't belong. Yet we look at some of the biggest world changers today, and they are some of the biggest dreamers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like, yeah, our kids are taught how to just regurgitate.
Yep.
And it's like, no, it's time to wake up. You have dreams, and the Lord is ready and willing to restore dreams that maybe you had as a child, or maybe you had as a teen.
Yeah.
And there's creativity that is just there for the taking. It's there. And so even like chapter 2 then goes after anything that's holding you back from pursuing that creativity. So it's
so
finding lies in your childhood,
That's so
finding
good.
old wounds that are like, nope, that doesn't belong here, and giving it back to the Lord, going, I'm gonna dream again.
Yep.
And this book isn't just for filmmakers, it's for creatives. It's for people to say, I want to say yes to dreaming. I have a cousin who's a mechanic who said, I want to learn how to dream with the Lord in my mechanic work, bring fresh creativity to fixing cars.
Yep.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's
great.
written for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah, and I think it's just so huge and needed, because, like we said, we're in an emerging culture, we're in an emerging society, and how much more do we have to dream to be able to be where everybody is?
Absolutely.
We can't just use old templates, but what I love about the book is it's foundational in teaching the foundations of how to tap into this. Like, how do you get in, and then how do you steward it? 'Cause that's what I tell people all the time. You can have dreams and you can be a dreamer, but if you never steward them, then he won't give you more.
Sure.
Right. So when you're faithful with what he gives you, then he's just going to start pouring it on. And it's like the fire hose starts and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're writing.
Now
you're
you're
writing.
just like,
you're right.
you're
recording.
All of a
You're
sudden you're
recording
keeping
his
a
thoughts.
journal
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this was way more than I thought. Now it's overload. Now what do I do with it? And I think that's why we need more people like you being able to help teach, train, develop, and steward that with others, and I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Well, Tyler, we could talk to the world looks level. We do on many, many nights, staying up super, super late. Love your family. Love you. So glad that you have put this out. I'm so glad that we get to support you in this and encourage you in it. Keep on. I know you have many more books in you, but until then, run out, grab this book on Amazon. How can our viewers follow you, support you, get involved with you? Where do they go? How do they do that?
So books on Amazon, you can look that up. But then you can find us through our website, which is parableint.org. That's our nonprofit. So you can find, even our socials through there, which my social is Tyler W. Child. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, those are the two best places. And really the other thing that we're doing with the book is because it's made to be, there's a lot of response in it. If people are wanting to order bulk for their churches or whatever, or for Bible studies, you can shoot me an email on through our website, and I can get you bulk from different pricing than even Amazon. But that's kind of one of the things we're hoping to do with it.
How do I book you to come speak to my employees and the people?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah, through our website, parableint.org. You can go through the contact form and request. And we speak all over the world. We were in 6 countries last year, 20 states. And so when I'm not speaking and teaching, I'm on movie sets. And when I'm not on movie sets, I'm back speaking and teaching.
Man,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so great. So, Jake, thanks for being a guest host again.
Yeah.
Always fun to sit with family.
It is.
Literally. And Tyler, appreciate you. Can't wait for the world to get a hold of this book. And until then, go grab your copy, and we'll see you on Set Life.